I've got a number of Chelsea fans, and to me, it's a very straightforward question. Explain to us why Bowley and the rest at the top of the house at Chelsea have signed Mudryk. Mykhailo Mudryk. We were talking to the Shakhtar chief exec a short time ago. But they've signed him on the longest contract in the history of the Premier League. He's joined Chelsea on an 8.5-year deal. Why are they doing this? Why have they signed Badiashile on a 7.5-year deal? Why have they signed the striker David Datro Fofana on a 6.5-year deal with the option of another year included? Is this about FFP and how to get round it?
I think so, yeah. I think inevitably it is. I mean, the conditionality of the contracts, whether there's options built into these contracts that make them 6-year contracts or 5-year contracts with 3-year options at the back end, which they can still put on, and they haven't declared those, I don't know. But the only methodology I can think is being deployed by Todd here is he's looking at it commercially, going, we depreciate, amortise, depreciate, however you want to qualify the devaluing of a player over a contract. We've discussed this before. £80 million player, 4-year contract. You write him down at £20 million a year. In layman terms, that means that an £80 million player on a club's balance sheet is worth £60 million at the end of year 1. He's worth £40 million at the end of year 2. £20 million at year 3. He's 0 at the end of year 4, and he's out of contract, right? You follow the gist of it.
Right.
If you do it over 8 years, you reduce the depreciation from £20 million a year to 10, which means that there's no impact. There's a £10 million a year better situation around the losses or the financial viability of your football club. So I can only assume that Todd is looking at it going, the biggest cost that we have at Chelsea, besides the wages, and the biggest effect on our profitability is transfer fees and their depreciation. If we're depreciating players over 3 or 4 years, why would we want to do that? Especially on younger players that we're buying properly, we're identifying properly, we're looking at their characters. John Terry played for this football club for 15 years. He came through our academy. XYZ player came through our academy. Why wouldn't we sign young players and keep them for 8 years? We can retain the value. We can retain our position in the marketplace. We can stage their rewards and their contracts based upon the performance of the market at the time. So we won't be overpaying them for being here. And at the same time, we can insulate ourselves against very, very chunky levels of depreciation. If you're spending £400 million in the last 2 transfer windows, and you've got each player on 4-year contracts, you're taking £100 million off your profitability each season simply by these players depreciating over their contract terms. If you can halve that by a bulk of those players getting longer contracts, now you take the risk. You take the risk that you buy a pup and then you're stuck with him. You've got a Winston Bogart, or whatever the fella's name was.
Right? Oh, no, I remember him.
I remember him that just sat there.
Well, see, that's the thing. One or two Chelsea fans asking me to ask you, what is the chance of Mudryk being at Chelsea even 5 or 6 years from now?
That's irrelevant.
Let alone 8.5.
That's irrelevant. If that player at 22 years of age has smashed it for Chelsea for 5 or 6 years, and Real Madrid coming through the door, they wanted Hazard, and they're going to sell him. Well, first of all, we'll be on Chelsea's books at 20 million quid. So when Chelsea sell him for 60, 70, 80 million quid, they'll be booking a £60 million profit at that time, which will help them with their next set of transactions for their next set of purchases to be able to offset any depreciation they get.
So is it good sense?
If they do their recruitment properly, it's like anything else. When you've got something of value, you don't want it to be written down. You don't want to depreciate something over a period of time, because if it's affecting your overall outcome, lack of profitability, it's not a loophole. Who said players had to be signed on 3-year contracts? Who said that to have 4-year contracts? These are football things that often get changed. I remember walking in the door saying, well, you don't put managers on notice periods when they leave. And subsequently, I did, and Steve Bruce got caught in an injunction because he couldn't just walk out of my club and go and join Birmingham.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.